Thank you, Clive. Review of debt management policy.
Just expand and share. Okay, so there is a request for just to have an overview of our debt collection. So previously the debt collection policy has been distributed, so I'll talk briefly about that at the end. Basically, we've got 3 different policies which kind of relate to each other in debt collection: the debt management policy, rates hardship policy, and the hardship policy for residential customers of minor and intermittent water retailers. Just get rid of this. Oh, now I've lost my screen. Okay. So we've got a debt management policy. Basically, it's a basic policy, very much similar to other councils, and basically it also provides the right of unrecoverable debts while seeking timely payments of amounts owed. The next one is our debt collection for rates hardship policy. All councils should have a rates hardship policy, and this is basically to assist ratepayers who are experiencing financial hardship. Majority of people that come are basically that someone may have been a death, there might be an estate, or some people have had life-threatening disease such as cancer. On a short-term basis, I'll give them a remission of their rates for interest payments. Normally that's only a period of up to 3 months. Hardship policy for residential customers for intermediate water retailers. So basically this is legislation we've required to have a policy for, and it's basically for our water supply and for our CMWS, and there's a number of requirements which we must have within the policy. So basically it stops council from cutting the water off or disconnecting the sewage. And there's a set procedure where we've got to allow them a payment plan, and they've basically got to default a couple of times before we can do something really drastic. Just this screen is just really showing an overview of the debt collection procedure. So basically the scenario is for rates, we have a rate notice issued, and then we have an overdue notice if they haven't paid for the quarter, which is basically about 10 days after the payments were deemed due. Then we'll wait for a second rate notice and then do a second overdue notice. So our policy requires that 2 instalments must be overdue before we actually commence with our debt collection. At that stage, when we've got that second notice issued, 190 days have elapsed. So then from that point, we give a legal letter from our debt collection agency that requires payment within 21 days. In reality, we add another 9 days for postage, so basically that's 30 days. If there's no response from that, obviously we're trying to look to get a payment arrangement or for them to come make contact at least with us. A claim is filed with the courts, and also once again they get a notification that there is a requirement of payment within 21 days, plus our normal 9 days allowing for postage, so another 30 days have ticked on. If there's no action, we haven't received any payments or been approached them about any plans, once again it ticks on to the next one, which is an investigation summons, which is a civil lawsuit, and once again 21 days plus 9 days for postage. If anything, no payment has been received, there's an examination summons. So that's where the ratepayer is to be placed under oath. If they don't appear, a warrant is issued. So basically that's when a sheriff goes after that person and we'll drag them to court. So that's really the warrant of apprehension, which authorises the sheriff or the police to arrest the ratepayer and physically then bring to court for a chamber examination. So in the worst case scenario, the above steps have taken about 294 days or 42 weeks of the year. So just to give you an idea, it is a drawn out procedure, and at the last resort, we've got the option for a sale of land. Obviously, that we need arrears of at least 3 years or more. We need to serve notice of the intention to sale to the owner and interested parties, and council always chooses to also serve notice against the property, and also a public notification is required in a paper circulating the state. When a notice has been served, the owner's got the right to pay to stop the auction at any time before the date of the sale by paying the total outstanding rates and any legal costs. Disruptions to the debt collection. So if council enters into a payment arrangement from any of those steps that we saw previously, and then they fail to make payment, then the process starts all over again. So you can see quite easily how a simple or reasonably simple someone being nearly taken to the courts and then them defaulting after a couple of payments, then the process starts again. You can see how easily it takes to get a debt well over 1 year old. So, and in addition, council has resolved to cease legal actions to certain groups. So historically, back in August 2021, we had COVID. We ceased all legal action. Then in December 2022, with the flood event, we gave that relief and stopped all legal action for anyone in the footprint of the floods. And then also in July 2025, and that was extended to October 2005 with another report for payments they were deferred up to into March 2026. We deferred legal actions for any primary production properties. So that goes through basically an overview of debt collection. In looking at the policy and talking to Julia, our rates officer, asked whether she thought that there should be any changes to the policy as it reads at the moment. And one suggestion was that because we wait for those 2 instalments or a greater amount of $500, because on average it can cost the legal costs can be up to $500. So it's a combination of some fixed costs and also the amount which is outstanding. We've set it at $500, so that we wouldn't chase a debt for $200 and then give them up to basic $500 for debt collection, basically doubling or nearly tripling their original outstanding amount. Julie thought that for the marina properties that we should remove the $500 limit, because we can be waiting up to a year until they get up to that $500. So then you can see that, like, if you look at the other steps, their debt can be basically, we're only starting after a year. So then by the time we kick it in, if that gets to the nth degree, that can be nearly 2 years. So looking at the policy, that's the only obvious change that management would recommend at this stage. But I'll distribute this slides, and if people want to have a think about that and decide what other actions council may want to take up to try improve our situation. There are a lot of innovative collection agencies, that they've got things such as apps that people can have. They can make their own repayment plans. So there's a lot more, let's say, interaction that we can have. Council hasn't entered that realm at this stage. So
my only question, Clive, is what can we do to not have, like, because this policy isn't working for us at the moment. So what are other councils doing that don't have the unpaid rates? Is it about our socioeconomics? What is it that, like, we've got 10% nearly of rates outstanding. So how do we decrease that if we're not going to change the policy?
yes, so it's probably like it's the only thing we can really do is, on a combination of things, looking at whether we can go out to the, I suppose, first of all, most likely we probably need to have a look over the analysis of what's outstanding. Look probably at some of those innovations, such as, should we be going back to our collection agency and say, what other items have you got? Possibly to test that, we probably should go out to the market and see whether we can see what innovations and what other debt collection agencies can probably deliver us. So that's a matter of going out to market and tendering for our services once again, see what's happening, have an analysis of look what's happening. Look, we have a lot of arrangements where people are actually making deductions through their Centrelink. And that works really great for people. And I think it's because they don't have to budget for their payments of rates. It actually looks after itself because it gets taken out prior to their Centrelink payments. And obviously it's harder times now, so people are looking at their bills and that. So, when I came here, there was the debt collection was probably a little bit lax, and there was a lot of repayment plans given with no interest or fines applicable. So when I commenced, I stopped that because there's no incentive for that person to pay their rates. They're basically getting a free loan, and even if it's accumulating, it's still free. So there's been a number of factors, and I suppose we just need to chip away at that and see what else we can do.
A company called Payable in Canberra, and I sent you, I think, the fact sheet because they had us on the blacklist because we were one of the councils with the most rates outstanding per percentage. I don't know what they provide, but it might be worth looking at something like that.
Yep. Can I just ask if there's any capability for us to actually remove services from people who have not made a hardship application? We know there are people who don't pay their rates who are not doing it because of hardship. Like, I don't know, cancel their bin collection or something. I don't know. Some services that we provide that they still get despite not paying their rates.
Yeah, that might be a bit hard. So basically, we can't cut the water or the CMWS because of the requirements of the SCOSA. Probably with people's bins, there might be that they could wheel it across the road or put it next to the neighbours, and because they're not identifiable, or there's no check for the garbage collection to scan a barcode and say, oh, this is a valid bin. Clive at 41 Don Hart's Hill, we've paid his rates, fine.
Yeah. I do wonder if we could not allow them to get their free dump vouchers. That might be something we could do. Councillor Roz?
Yeah, that's me. When you say sheriff, that's to do with the debt collection agency, yes?
Correct, yeah.
And also, how long has this council been using the debt collection agency?
The current one has been was engaged prior to my arrival.
And there's been no review of that debt collection agency in your time?
Yeah, they basically use the same process. It's more that we probably need to look at innovation of people being able to make their payments where, we haven't taken up any of those options. And I suppose, previously prior to the NBN being rolled out and, having decent mobile services, basically, a lot of those opportunities haven't been available because of, the scarcity of coverage in our council, but things have changed. So we probably need to have a fresh look at and try, even try piloting some of those to see how successful they are. So, it seems like the best way, I feel, and we keep on trying to promote it, that we can do direct debits, we can do deduction from your Centrelink payments. People that seem to get onto that, they don't seem to have problems with it, and that may be the lower part of our social economic part of our council. It's just enticing those or making, getting those people to enter into those agreements, and I'm sure it makes their budgeting far better. And I've always kind of thought that since the cost of living, which has gone from which used to get paid to councils and through this CNWS connections, where we used to actually have a credit which used to go on to the rates notice. I've always kind of thought, have a lot of our pensioners which have got on our CNWS schemes, do they actually know that they can apply for that and get a extra credit? Now that actually comes directly from the state government. So it's probably just some of those awareness things that we need to promote as well to kind of help some of our people. But yeah, definitely looking at more innovative ways of people communicating us or communicating with the debt collection agency, and so a lot of those, I understand that they can kind of give reminders when council rates are due to ensure that people pay, and those reminders can be like on a regular basis, like, you should be, if you want to make a fortnightly payment, you should be paying $26 this fortnight, or some things like that. So, we just need to be a bit more innovative about how we can collect and see what's out there, I think.
But then again, I mean, you're going on like everyone has internet connection. They do, internet banking, all this sort of stuff. Some people don't. Is the debt collection agency actually aware that some people actually need a physical letter in their hand?
And that's the process we're doing now. I'm just saying we not only to do the physical letter, but also we need to give people options if they want to have an app which reminds them that they're making a council payment, that we make that available as well. Yeah.
My question I have in regards to that is, like, have we explored Zip or Afterpay and those kind of things that a lot more people who I guess are in this lower economic, I know we say we do direct debits, but a lot of people use those other services that then give them incentives in other ways. Like if they make their payments on time, they get options for other things within the world of those places. But if they don't make payments, they have their own late fee structures on that as well. So then it could be, not in that middle bracket of person that's maybe not on Centrelink, say, for example, or it's just a low income earner. It means that they can pay it off in a few fortnights of payments to spread it out over an amount. And then it kind of takes the ball out of our court a little bit by Zip or, I know there's Afterpay and Zip and those things that help sort of low income earners to budget it throughout a few months. Do we offer, have you thought about offering that?
I don't think any council, to my knowledge, I don't think any council has. I'm not sure what the ramifications of those would be, because my understanding is that with local government fees we can't add any additional charges, and I would imagine that basically the schemes or the companies that you've mentioned would then penalise those people if not making their payments. So there's quite strict restrictions on what council can and can do as far as charges. So, for instance, we can't charge anyone basically on-charge anyone if they want to use a credit card, etc. I know that that's a disadvantage. If we wanted to try and penalise people and say that we don't accept cash, we're not allowed to do that. I think there's kind of current legislation which would probably ban us from using those companies that you've mentioned. But I can do a bit of investigation and see whether that is possible.
I mean, obviously, the fees that they charge are fees that they're charging, so it's coming as their fee as opposed to our fee, which is why I thought it could be acceptable. But, I just thought, and it could have been a silly question, but I just thought it'd be an opportunity to explore.
Yeah, I've got every sympathy for people who are in hardship, but I'm interested to know whether you've got a feel, Clive, for the proportion of people who approach us because of hardship in paying compared to the numbers of people who default on their rates payments.
The number of people that come to us for hardship is very low, and I kind of frowned on people that don't approach us early, and that's what we always promote. If you've got hardship about paying your rates, see us, as soon as you can before it becomes an issue. Where I have a number of people, and I had this one person from interstate, and they were the executor of an estate, and he was basically saying, "Oh, well, I want you to write off the last year's fines because we haven't paid the estate's rates." And I was, my blood boiled a bit. I was basically said that as the executor, I don't think you've done your duties.
Yeah.
And he was trying to blame, the rate notice was going somewhere, and far out. The property was probably one of the biggest assets of the estate. If you don't think about the ins and outs of that, to me, you're not doing it. So, the short answer is not very many people approach us. It's very, I've had a couple where people say, and there's been a couple of rural people saying, we've had the drought. I'm trying to redo my finances. Can you not pay? Can we not get charged just for this month's fines, or which were due because their finance hadn't moved from one bank to another? And and look, if people give me some type of evidence, I'm more than willing to give them a little bit of slack as far as that concerns. So it's a bit of common sense. Not very many people. And what I do is, if there's an estate or one of the partners passed away, I give them 3 months grace, and I say, look, if that's not enough, come back, but I'll need something in writing, and I can extend it for another period of time. And look, they're very thankful, and they don't. It's very, very, very rarely I even have them come back and ask for an extension.
And that's why I think that, maybe one of the strategies could be, we can talk about this again, but maybe one of the strategies could be a really big campaign for, if you can't pay your rates, contact us. We can negotiate terms, conditions, blah, blah, but you must contact us. Because I'm sure there are people out there who aren't paying their rates, not because of hardship. And they're the people that I'd really like to be able to identify separate from the people who have hardship, who we should have, as you say, and you do, an open door policy, but maybe our marketing strategy could be improved.
I just wanted to make a couple of comments. One, regarding the afterpay suggestion, I'm all for exploring different options, but I know people that actually get themselves in financial trouble with afterpay and zip pay. My son was one of them for a while. So to me, that's just sort of like shifting the burden to another company. The person's still in financial hardship. And also regarding the education side of it, I may have mentioned this previously, but a few years ago when we were still living in Adelaide, we were on the verge of losing our house. And because we contacted the bank really early on, we were able to sort something out and, managed to pull through. So I think the education side of it is really where we need to focus a lot of energy on as well.
Probably it's interesting just to I found it quite interesting where you can have a deferral of rates for people that are basically retired, and that allows them to pay a minimum of $500 annually, and what happens is their rates accumulate, and the interest which is charged is 1% higher than council can borrow, which is quite low, which would be far lower than any type of bank loan they could get. For years and years, we only had about 2 or 3 people. Now that's climbed quite considerably. Now we've got over a dozen where people have taken that option up. So once again, I think for the older generation, if they want to stay in their house, they might be once again asset rich but cash poor. By paying a minimum of $500, they can stay in their house, and that will stop any legal actions from council. And the amount which accumulates on their rates is far lower than any bank loan that they could have. So, maybe in the next newsletter that we promote that as well. So there's probably there's a couple areas where we could do a little bit of a highlight or a bit of an article and raise those items where there's some options for people.
Well, thank you, Clive. Any other questions at all on debt management policy? Thank you for those questions. Good discussion. Clive, you now have, thank you for that. You now have -5 minutes for rating your vacant land. Over to you.
Sure, we can do it in 5 minutes.
Sure.
Okay, once again, I'll give you a copy of these slides. Just a quick presentation about a differential rating, and in particular vacant land. Under the regulation, there's 9 categories. One of those is vacant land. Section 156 allows us to rate by those different categories, 9 different categories, and the locality of land. So council previously was, rural and urban, but I always have issues with that because there's a line somewhere and there's 2 properties and one's paying a different rate than the other. So I think locality is still the way to go, what we've done. Short definition of vacant land blocks is land that currently contains no buildings or improvements, not actively being used for any approved purpose. And then I've got a couple more slides here which really talks about the legal test of those. And once again, I'll give these slides to you. And it's basically saying, you might have some minor improvements, but still deemed to be vacant land, fencing, shed of garage, no primary house, basically cleared. You might have a concrete slab or a driveway, or you might have some old buildings, but they're derelict or uninhabitable. So they would still be deemed vacant. Properties under construction, if they're not completed, they're still deemed to be vacant as well. And then there's a definition of how the Value General pinpoints vacant land for vacant land in urban, rural and commercial, basically empty suburban blocks, residential where you might have an empty farm block, commercial empty blocks within a business zone. What's not vacant land? Basically, people might think, there's a paddock there, it's just vacant land. But if it's actually used for spelling livestock or growing crops or leased out to a neighbouring farm, it's legally classified as primary production. And just as if you think your land use is incorrect, you can actually apply to the VG as well. Contiguous land, this is where if we have a different rate, we'd probably have to think of our policy, and I have to have a look at the legalities of it, where you've got adjoining land, and if you had 2 different rates, basically a lot of people used to buy 2 blocks of land, build a house on one and say, we might plant an orchard there or whatever. So if you have vacant land, the other one would be deemed vacant, but they're adjoining, so we'd have to look at what council's policy would be if we had 2 different rates. To give you an idea, there's all the different rates in dollars for this year. Bit confusing, so I've got a next slide, which is a bit better. Just works about the percentages based on residential. So on the far left, you can see Mid-Murray, we're all 90%, and then we've got the 10% discount for prime production. Interesting, you go over 3 columns, Locks and Waikerie, Council Shields, you need to talk to them. Prime reduction, they've got 173% higher than residential. So, but more importantly, vacant land, if you go across, Mid-Murray is 100%, Murray Bridge is 150% compared to residential, Locks and Waikerie is 122%, Coorong's 165, Barossa is 212, Light Regional 229, and Mount Barker, which has a rating structure very similar to ours, is 100%. So there's obviously the trend is that more other councils do rate vacant land. When I was at Waikerie Regional Council, we basically looked at the averages and we said, well, let's make the percentage on average for rates raised to be the same as if it had a house on for the average house as well. That's how we drove it at Waikerie Regional Council. So definitely something to look at.
I think we should be looking at the commercial too, Clive, if you ever look at all of those, and that would bring in the marina berths as well, who are only paying commercial.
Yep.
If you go back one slide, Murray Bridge's commercial rate is double ours.
Yep.
And that's not stopping commercial people coming into Murray Bridge. They've got, TNR Foods and lots and lots of investment.
Yep.
And they do cost council in money and in economic development and all of that. If we had the income coming in, we could put more to that.
Yeah, so basically when you kind of go across here, you can kind of see Murray Bridge, commercials more one hit, like 160, industrials 40%, Locks and Waikerie, they've gone about 143, industrials about the same, Coorong about 120% for commercial and industrial. So, so there's definitely other areas, and what we can do is probably do an analysis of that and say, well, what type of properties or what type of business is going to be impacted by those. Just looking at vacant land, we've got about 1,700 properties, total capital value of about $1/3 billion. Rates raised $1.9 million, or about 9.9% of total rates. If council changed vacant land to be 150% of residential rate, additional 4.5% of rates would be raised, or nearly 944,000 would additional rates income be generated. Or if you want to look on the flip side of it, alternatively a reduction to what other land use types would pay. So why? It encourages development, stops land banking. There would be a number of properties, especially high valued properties along the river. People buy, they put them in their superannuation fund and they just sit on them for 20, 30 years. So, but we would rather have houses on them and have people here generating more business. Obviously, build homes faster and help the housing supply. The next slide, fairness and community costs. Pay for the nearby services, roads, power, and fair share of costs. Stops people with empty land from paying very low rates while relying on public works. So this is just the minimum requirements that we must undertake. So if there's a significant change to rate structure, the last time we had a rate review was probably nearly going 5 years ago. So we're probably up for a review. The steps are basically prepare a formal report, provide public notice. Previously, we did a whole lot of public meetings throughout the district, and then allow at least 21 days for the feedback. And that's that presentation.
Any questions for Clive?
I have a question. Just in regards to vacant land versus conservation or revegetated land. I know a few people out my way in Pondy that are city people that have land blocks that aren't intending to probably ever build on them, but instead they've used them as a carbon offset and have planted hundreds of trees on those lands. So I was wondering if we were looking at reviewing our land policies versus vacant land that could be a house block in the future or riverside property versus some that people have bought for the specific thing of carbon footprint, off-print, and preserving rare areas of native bushlands or whatever and stuff like that, because there's a few of them, maybe not so much in Manham, but I think within the Mid-Murray there'd be a few of them around where people have used them as revegetation blocks as their own personal thing of restoring a bit of environmental stuff. How would we distinguish between the two if we were to change the rateable vacant land?
So let me take that on board. I know there's like notional values because people have used them for that type of purpose. I'll just good question. Let me get back to that. would those people register or do anything special with those properties? You don't think?
Well, one that I know of near me on Dabinet Road, he calls it Pondy Heights, but basically he's made this his life plan in the last 30 years. He's got a nice big property there where he's connected with Trees for Life and rare tree societies. Like, he has all those signs on his front gate. So I was thinking he would be classified as a vacant land, but I know he'd be devastated if his rates got too unaffordable for him to be able to maintain that property, which he is kind of doing a service to conservation with. So, and it's not like he wants it ever to be a house on there. Like, he wants it to be a regenerative bush block and a carbon offset.
So, Clive, in that instance, there's generally like a heritage agreement on those properties.
Yep. Thanks, Gary. I just couldn't think that, there was some type of agreement or registration or something, and then I think they get a nominal valuation. The valuation actually goes lower automatically by the Lands Department. So, if anything, the lower value would probably far outweigh like 150% on residential. Yeah, it'd still be underneath that. So, but leave with me. I'll come back with a bit of information. Yep, good question.
Thank you, Clive, for that.
Yep.
I think Ross, you have a question. Is that right?
Yeah, I do. I'm just wondering the legalities of having a separate rate for vacant land. I mean, there's no law against buying land and having that as a nest egg rather than having shares or stocks or money in the bank.
No, there isn't. I suppose but there's probably like a issue as far as the community, and if you had one street and everyone was land banking around you, that might stop the development of that area. So there's been areas where there's townships. Well, we had Balaclava. You couldn't buy a vacant block there, but there was heaps of vacant blocks.
So basically, so basically you're talking about in townships, not anywhere else.
I'm talking about blocks which aren't prime production or any other land use. So if people have just got a block of land, they're not doing anything with it, it's not under prime production or anything, it would be deemed to be vacant land. But I can probably get like a bit of a cross section of what vacant land is and their size to give you an idea.
Yeah.
Thank you, Clive. Thank you, Ross. Thank you for that. Yep. You're right, Ross. Thank you. Thanks for those questions. Thank you, Victoria, for yours as well. All right. Thank you, Clive. We're going to move on to Dave now, who's going to be talking about service levels and works program framework. I think Darren's about there. And thank you, Darren, for coming along today and helping out with the technology. He's going to run the presentation, and Dave is going to through his dulcet tones, through the technology, talk to it.
Okay, I might just hand it over to Darren, it might be easier. Thanks, everyone. Today's a little bit about, I've spoken a bit about annual programs for our capital works and so forth, but when we've been doing our maintenance service levels, because I suppose when you look at regulatory services, planning, finance and governance and corporate, they're all come under relevant acts and legislation. Whereas when we do maintenance in council works, we are very much discretionary and I suppose relied upon to do just about everything and try to get it all sorted. So what we're looking at doing is going through the maintenance activities and showing you how we're looking at addressing that this financial year. So Darren, next slide. Thanks, mate. So this is a slide of a previous one which I showed you for your annual program. So how we set our programs is obviously through strategic plans, infrastructure and asset management plans, MRLG funding strategies, the service standards which we're looking at setting and trying to make sure we can maximise on how we do our activities so that we don't look, I suppose, foolish in trying to set them too high for our resources and funding. Obviously, we've got compliance we need to go with. We've got historical funding, which is, I suppose, doesn't reflect our backlog of work. We obviously have maintenance issues and local knowledge, which we're working through now to I suppose, ascertain what our maintenance issues are, where capital works will remediate those sites, so we don't have repetitive issues at those maintenance areas. Managing community expectations, that is extremely difficult, and I'll touch on that later. And delivering proactively as best practice and reducing reactivity. So what we're going to talk about today is looking at setting a frequency of priority setting, scheduling and programming, and this is specifically for maintenance because basically capital works is set and forget. And it's also about our delivery of a framework on how we can best prioritise our works. If you can go to the next slide, thanks, Darren. So as I said, the background for our capital works is based on our infrastructure and asset management plan, and I refer to the asset accounting policy. So once we spend any more than anywhere between $10,000 and up to $15,000 per project, theoretically it should be capitalised or given consideration as capital. So if we go out and do a $20,000 maintenance job, in theory we should capital or consider it for capital works. So with our roads, we do our renewal. We have our limited upgrades, which we do. Our swims, we do our renewals with improvements. So we've just had a swims asset management plan, which is then catered for future proofing, which is the SCADA and the trafficable lids and a few other little items that we put in the new revised asset management plan. Our bridges is through a renewal program, and same as our stormwater. So that's a renewal program, mainly unfunded because we've been going through sustainability. Footpaths and curbing, they generally align to our reseal program so that we can actually fix what's adjacent to our reseals. We also upgraded our plant and fleet renewal when we also looked at our improvements there as well to I suppose, better resource ourselves. And river structures is based on our renewal plan, and open space is in development, but we do have, I suppose, in-house activity-based and service levels for open space which haven't been adopted yet, but we're trying to look at those as best as practical. Next one, Darren. So from a maintenance perspective, this is work we would normally do on any specific item that's under, say, $10,000, and $15,000 is just another increment within the asset accounting policy. So the roads is basically very discretionary. Obviously, we have a grading program and a patching as need, but it's within our current resources. And obviously, the plant replacement program has opened up a little bit of a opportunity for us where we can actually utilise the same resources by having a variety of plant. Swims is basically through compliance. So obviously, our maintenance program is through compliance and being proactive and reactive. Bridges is discretionary, so that's our maintenance on bridges. We do have a program in place for our bridge repair, but we could do so much more better because there's a lot of things on bridges that can fail or inspections and so forth that we need to be looking for. Stormwater, again, it's basically setting up a program. These ones generally can become very reactionary, similar to footpaths, curbing, and our requirement for compliance with plant and fleet. And through our river structures, we've adopted a service level for boat ramps, but the rest is very discretionary. So we're still working through those. But of significance for us now is the open space, weed spraying, street sweeping and slashing and mowing, because that's our general maintenance, and it comes back to presentation of towns and a huge cost factor. So we're going to touch on those from a maintenance perspective today. Next slide, Darren. So the issues we actually have is and we'll get to the bottom part here. We are very reactive and very driven by community requests. It's very difficult to be proactive. I've said it for a long time now. We do a lot of tree trimming in the townships, but we don't do a lot in the rural area, and we need to. We should also be doing a lot of work out on our rural sealed roads, but that is very limited too because our resources are basically gobbled up by the level of inquiries received and the demand by the customer. The customer also have many different demands, so they might ring up and have 4 or 5 different aspects when they ring us up. They might say the grass needs cutting. I've got a tree trim. Your footpath's got rubble on it, and there's a tree dropping leaves. So there's all these elements when we get these expectations in, and they also expect it to be very, very immediate, and which actually has difficulty for us meeting the customer charter. So that whole process with the issues compromises our ability to be productive. Just to give you a little bit of an overview, we did a bit of an assessment between the first 6 months of this calendar year, just from infrastructure alone, and this is only through phone calls and emails that come in. There's a lot of other avenues that they come in. but we received approximately 800 requests across the 6 months. We have received a lot more than that. They're very difficult to deal with, and sometimes those requests could take a week to repair, which has an impact on our finance thresholds. Basically, that collates to about nearly 6 to 6.5 requests per workday. And until we actually check it out, we don't know what the defined remediation is until we've actually assessed it. So sometimes we may go out and assess it. It might take us a couple of days to go out and assess it, but then the resident will ring us up and say, well, when are you going to come back and fix it? And then that makes it a reactive process, which is very difficult again to manage. Also, the customer also expects that a response is going to be immediate and generally want contact directly afterwards. So our field staff then become customer service, and then they obviously receive further requests from the contact they're made, which also makes it very problematic. So some of our supervisors are very much on the phone, probably for a couple of hours a day, if they're ringing people back, and that is not an understatement. So looking at the minimal resources available for program work, I've basically got about 20 staff in maintenance. I've got 47 staff across the whole board. That's in the field staff, including swims. So I've got about 20 across 3 depots. So as you can imagine from the geographics of the area, it's very difficult to keep that work. And they do a hell of a job doing it. They do a great job. But in doing that, it makes it very difficult to set up the program work which we're looking for, and also then giving us the opportunity of assessing and setting service levels. So there's a lot of factors that are coming into us, and we don't have the time or the ability or the availability and the expectation to be able to repair, fix, or undertake all the works that we need to do rather than what the customer requests from us to do. Next slide, Darren. So to give you an idea of what we're planning and what we had been planning over the last probably 6 months, this is for maintenance team activities only. So when you talk about the 20 people I was talking about earlier, given that construction that does their roads, they've got their roads set and forget, and then they'll do maintenance outside of that. So this is our maintenance team that really pick up, if I can just say, all the minor activities, but that are very close to the heart of the residents, meaning weeds, weed spraying, chipping, slashing, lawn mowing, and tree trimming, and basic amenity works. Also public toilets in there as well. So you look at all the maintenance issues that you need to address. So we're looking at setting activity-based schedules on a proactive basis. Having said that, I've asked my teams to give me a tree trimming program for 6 months to address towns, and they're only addressing like a 2-week element in, say, one town, and say a 4-week element in another town, and they won't get the whole town done. But what we're looking at doing is sharing the program around so that they can actually be seen and focused in those areas. And then the last 6 months will be aimed, once we have the plant machinery in place, is looking at a rural road program. So they're going to actually start addressing what's out there. So on the basis of setting a set activity, this is tree trimming, meaning that when someone rings in, we'll go and assess it, and we'll assess it within a certain time frame, but then it will be put on a schedule. It'll be put on a program, and the program will be set, and then we'll go and address it. If it's a high-risk matter, it'll be addressed immediately. But if it's a tree trimming amenity issue, or someone thinks it's a risk, then we'll assess it, and then we'll take the determination from that. The second dot point is we're going to assess the sealed road defects. So we've got well over 350 k's of sealed roads. I can drive the roads now and look at a massive amount of backlog of works. I've got about $480,000, $500,000 in sealed road maintenance. If I wanted to do edge repairs and I'll pick the Moreel Road going out to Murray Bridge, or Millandella Road, I could spend a couple of $1 million doing edge repairs on those 2 roads alone, which means I've just exhausted all our budget. So we're also looking at going out, getting a defect list so that we know what's out there, and then we can then set up a framework on how we will try and address it. And the framework, which is the 4th dot point there, is basically a response framework, meaning what is the road? Is it a transport route? What's the volume frequency? What's the vehicle type? And what's the vehicle speed? What's the speed environment of that road? So obviously the higher speed roads are going to get a higher priority, and the lower speed township roads won't get a high priority. We're also going through a process now where we're reviewing our specific costs for services versus frequency. To give you an idea, street sweeping. If I do one whole round of Mannum and the other towns, so we do Mannum quite a bit, and we do some other towns with the curbing, we do the couple of caravan parks. So how much does that cost per round? We've got the figures, we're working through that. But if I come up and said it's cost you $25,000 to do it per round, and then I only want to do it 4 times a year, well, then you're up for $100,000. If people expect it to be 6 times, it's going to cost us $150,000. That's what we're trying to get, is ascertain what is our priorities and what the cost of these things are. And we're going through that same process now with weed spraying, weed chipping, roadside slashing and mowing, so that we know how much it costs per frequency to do, so that we can work it within our budget and our resources. What we will do is also do an actual cost to the perfect scenario, meaning what my maintenance supervisor wants. If he says he wants to street sweep or weed spray 6 or 7 times a year, what does that cost versus what we're doing? So there's a gap between what he thinks we should do versus what we are doing. I did speak on implement the hierarchy of a response framework. That's basically to give us the processes we've already got in place for our capital works for our construction crew. But what we're doing now is assessing it based on how we will address maintenance. Another process we're actually going through too is identifying what our current infrastructure gap is. So we're doing an assessment of say, our townships. And what this assessment is doing is, if I take Morgan, for example, Morgan has nearly 95 to 100% of its roads sealed within the township boundaries, but there may only be 30 or 40% of that road network that's got footpaths or curbing. So you've got 60% that may have issues, and then we can put a cost to it to say, okay, well, you have a backlog of a gap analysis of what the community expect of X amount of dollars. So we're bringing all these processes together to give us a good forecast of what we can do. Are very emotional and have a lot of content. They do put in there, I suppose, the risk associated to council and to staff. So we're actually looking at how we receive those, and we're actually only asking for the activity and the issue, meaning if there's a tree issue, where is it located and what is the issue, not the risk analysis of what the complainants are ringing up about. And the process we've set up at present is we're meeting weekly to triage some complaints or the requests, so that we can actually then put that into a program, so that we can then go back to the person and say, yes, we're anticipating in being in Cadell in weeks of August, September, whatever they may be, and that's when we're going to address the tree issues in Cadell. Following that, we will be then to Dutton and Caton to do the trees in those areas. So that's the process we're going through. So we're looking at doing assess, not address. We're looking at change management process. It will create, I suppose, a bit of community angst, but I think if we educate, we'll be in a position where we can provide that to the community to say how we are trying to be more sustainable and how we address our maintenance programs. And then once we've reviewed our activities, we'll see how that fits within our resources and our funding available. And then obviously that'll provide to see whether we have a massive gap as to what the expectation of the community is versus what we're able to do. To keep the education process going, I am planning on putting reports to council on the process as this works through, and also engaging with the council with workshops on how we go about it, so that we can actually keep the progress rolling, and also then report to the community on how that works. So it will be an education process on how the programs work. The ultimate scenario is that it would be great if you lived in a township and you saw their tree trimmers come through the town in a 2-week window in, say, February, and then they did that again in the next February, and then all of a sudden people start realising that we address Palmer in February. That becomes the norm. that's an ultimate scenario. I don't know we'll ever get there with the resources we have and the reactivity we have, but at least we can put them into place where people will expect. Some people with grading programs already know. They know that the roads get graded 4 times a year, and they know, oh well, it's coming around the 4th month, it's due, and then they'll see the graders. So the processes we got in place for other elements of maintenance do work, and what we're looking at doing now is doing something very similar for maintenance to, I suppose, be best practice of how we approach it. And I think, Darren, that was the last slide.
On you, Dave. Thank you very much. Any questions for Dave? I think Kirsty, you might have one.
Yep, I do. Thanks, Dave. Look, I'm just wondering, the set calendar of when crews visit different areas or the work group. We did have that some time ago, and I think that was really good because the intent of that was so that people knew that there was people, that the work group was coming through, and so hopefully save some things apart from the urgent sort of stuff. So that would be really good if that came to fruition. And also when back when Russell Pilbeam, I think, was working with the team, he was trying to sort of set something up for ratepayer engagement, for them looking after their own verges, or a community sort of cohort, because there are some people that want to do that. Have we investigated that anymore, or where's that sort of sitting?
For the second part of the question in regards to ratepayer and road verge maintenance, we do have a fact sheet now. We adopted a fact sheet where it's a joint responsibility, so we do advertise that, and we do also try to promote that. I suppose that's the education process as to how that is adopted by the general ratepayer. There are quite a few people who do look after it, and it's great because they obviously it promotes the frontage of their property. It doesn't detract from their property, but there are some people who just go direct to Facebook and tell us that we're not doing a good enough job. Because I suppose when I go look at my resources, like I said, I had 20 people. At present, I've got 9 off of those 20. So we are very under-resourced at this point in time. So, but looking after road verges is something that is always probably expected from the ratepayer. Russell was looking at doing some various other engagement with things. We did do a bit of engagement with some of the rural areas, and I suppose that's how it's come about that we don't do enough in the rural area with tree trimming, because we're not meeting the demands in those areas, and I suppose the expectations of the township areas detracts from our ability to divert elsewhere.
Thank you. Thanks, Dave. I think between Jeff and Victoria had a question. I'll leave it up to you to find out who goes first.
First, Jeff.
Okay. Yeah, Dave, I've just got a quick question, and I don't want this taken the wrong way, but I think the schedule you're trying to set up is great as far as costing per projects. But does that mean that to a certain extent we've been flying blind up until this point?
In response, no. We have a budget which we go by every year, and we work to those budgets. We make budget allocations to it. We've been working with this process now for well and truly over a couple of years, but I suppose we've only actually made it a priority in the last 6 months, where we've actually been able to gauge and have external people to give us a hand to put this together. Because I haven't had managers on board, I've been able to get the extra resources and say, okay, can you help us in this area? Because the current staff, internal and external, don't have the time to do it, because we're actually responding to all these other matters. So we've been able to bring this into fruition and get that assessment and have our input into what we do, and then have an assessment from someone just who's taking all that information on board and giving it back to us. So as far as flying blind, from a maintenance perspective, we've been flying by doing our work as best we can seasonally and in response. But generally, the requests come in, and the requests actually dictate what we do, and they always have. So what we're trying to do now is take control of those and put them into a program. And then once we've informed the ratepayer that, it may be, it might be 3 months by the time we get back there. It's no different to how we address roads. If someone complains about a road at corrugation, the grader may be diverted there if it's needed to be, but it's also subjective. But generally, in most times, the grader will be there on its desired frequency.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Jeff. Victoria.
Yes. My question kind of stems, I guess, on Kirsty's question in regards to people adopting their roadside verges. And in the townships, I'm looking at more so of where we could be giving away free native plants that were ground covers. I know a lot of councils have a lot of success from giving away free plants if they're going to use them for their roadside verge, if they're then going to take a photo of them and tag Mid-Murray Council on Facebook with photos of them revegetating their roadside areas to be with specific plants that we approve, obviously, that aren't going to be high growing, and they can then prevent weeds to even need to be sprayed. I think, most councils now do that free native plant giveaway that's done through Landcare. And I think we really probably could consider doing a stronger drive for that in places like Manham and Morgan. For then people, the incentive is they're going to get some free natives, someone who might not already be thinking, I want to keep my verge nice, but are complaining about the weeds all the time. They could then consider, well, I'm going to be given from council a group of free natives to plant, to be able to then put mulch around that area. So then it just makes our job a lot better, and it's much more sustainable than continually spraying roadside weeds and having that be our sort of go-to to try and get rid of, unwanted vegetation where, I know definitely in Manham there's a lot of native salt bushes that are already growing on the roadside. So people could be encouraging spaces for wildlife and planting of natives if we were to say, do that initiative. And I know heaps of councils do, and we used to do it, but we don't do it anymore. And I just think it'd be a really good thing to sort of bring back in the free plant giveaway days to help with that, and then makes less work.
Yep, thanks for those comments. I suppose there's a couple of responses to that. In regards to weeds, there are quite a few people who have no spray zones, so we don't spray in front of those properties, so they do maintain that now. And I suppose there's always the element in regards to planting on the road verge as to pedestrian access and then access for the garbage truck on the road close to the curb. So there is some other matters we need to consider there. If they're prepared to do it and take on all the roles and responsibilities, they can do that under that fact sheet, because under 221 they can do it, they can apply for it. But we are reviewing our tree management policy now, but there is a tree planting guideline that has to be developed. We have one that's very old. The idea of salt bush does work. It's a great little, I suppose, barrier. I know Karoona have got their main street, and basically they've got salt bush plantings along the footpath area. So that actually does look quite pretty once it's been done. So, but again, it comes back to resourcing and what our resources will allow to be able to do that. So I suppose what we're trying to do is really assess what our resources can do so we can focus on the high level issues we need to get to, and then I suppose weed out, so to speak, the low level activities that are dominating our issues, and let's look at the bigger infrastructure issues that we need to do. Like, I suppose the process is, I could look at a sealed road. I've just done Merbco Road, widened 14 kilometres of it. It's about $600,000 because the bitumen was chewing away, and you've got heavy trucks on those ones. So if I look at Morrell Road, if you apply $600,000 and we've got a budget of $400,000 now, I've just blown the whole budget on one road. So that element of investment is I suppose protecting a $300,000 per linear kilometre of investment. So it's really setting the priorities of where we should focus the money on. If it comes back to street beautification, that would be a policy direction of council, which we can do.
Well, I was thinking more that big Landcare who are already growing at Cambrai, the plants, the nursery there, and it's sort of like normally most councils, when they do that free plant giveaway, it's like the plants are actually provided for free by Landcare for then council to then stash pile to grow and give away. And I think because we have a nursery within our council, that would be a partnership with them, that it wouldn't cost money for us, and obviously they'd have to look at the fact sheet and do it based on certain criteria around how they're allowed to have their roadside verge,
Yeah, I agree.
Sorry, Dave, go on.
Yeah, there is an element of risk. We've had people with the 221 permit before, so go out and plant trees. And when they planted trees, the agreement was that they were meant to water it for the first 2 to 3 years. After the first 3 months, they walked away and said, council can now do it. So there is an element of risk that once you plant it, it can come back to council. So, I mean, we have to be very, very determined in the policy that if they do plant it out and we don't have the resources, then it comes out.
I think we get back to the basics. Get this stuff right first, and then we can look at great things in the future when we've got this stuff right.
Yeah.
Good start though, Dave. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. And look, Dave and I had a chatting about this today, and it's an ongoing moving feast for councils and for infrastructure and field service areas, because the sweet spot shifts between your programmed and proactive work with your reactive work. Where's the balance so that you actually are able to get on top of things, but at the same time keep requests to a minimum? You're never going to remove requests, and it's also within finite resources dealing with that. So it's an ongoing thing that Dave's obviously, Dave and his team are obviously committed to ongoing review, and there's more information that will come to you in due course. But thank you, Dave, for that. Thanks for your questions on that too, members. Terrific. Now, I'm mindful of time. I just want to move on to the next item, which is the Waste Reuse Centre. So back on the 28th of July, Mandy, you sent an email through to me about waste reuse items that are in a good condition, and could that be a facility or a service that we offer at here in particular here in Mannum. Look, Dave and I have had a chat about this, and if you don't like the response, then it's Dave's fault. He takes full responsibility. Although if you think it's a reasonable response, I had something to do with it. Look, I'm happy to kick off, and Dave, you jump in whenever you want, either to put your opinion or just to save me. But I have got some experience in this space, both working for a large regional centre who did this at their transfer station, but also I spent some time heading up Southern Region Waste last year. Look, and having managed waste before even those experiences, it's a very challenging area. It's a very resource intensive area. It's a very noble offering. You could say it can be a big contributor to the whole circular economy. And it is. And I think what it is, though, my observation is it's very resource intensive. You need to have certain critical mass. You need to be able to get to have a certain number of people using it in order to have it focused in one particular area like that in a really intensive way. So I'm not convinced the critical mass is there, Mandy. That's my opinion. Notwithstanding, it's another one where maybe it's not council's role, maybe there's a role for others to play. And I know there would be others in your community who are either doing it now and would like to extend that, or maybe aren't doing it, who may be able to have that introduced into their, into their service. But I think it's a really good idea. It's a really good concept. I'm just not sure the economies of scale would have it work here. But in terms of that service offering, worth having a look at, moving forward for others. Okay. Sorry, Dave, do you want to?
No, Dave, before you chip in, I'll just make the point that I agree with that analysis, that we don't have the population to support somewhere like Brinkley. It was brought up to me as a concept, so I think I always like to have a considered response to people. So, Dave, you might want to add to it, but I think that's where Brinkley works, is because there's so many more people in Murray Bridge region than us, and this is always a problem for us, economies of scale.
And I think they're probably set up for it better too, being reasonably familiar with the Brinkley site and surrounds. But look, thank you, Mandy, for that. It's something that I think from a waste management perspective and from a strategic perspective, it's always something to be considering moving forward. Not just about having something like that in any of our facilities, but where it could actually exist elsewhere in the region. So thank you for that. Look, I'm mindful of time again, so I'll just move on to the next item, which is the South Australian Regional Organisation of Councils, SAROC, and LGA President nominations. It's got my name next to it, but I'm going to very conveniently hand over to Carrie, our new Governance Manager, Has everybody met? I know some of you have met Carrie so far. Carrie Rainsford, I think some of you have already. Everybody, this is Carrie. Carrie, this is everybody.
Hi.
So I think Carrie's just going to talk very briefly, just 1 minute on where we're taking this at the next council meeting.
Very briefly. So just to let you know that the SAROC and LGA president nominations are up. They are coming up, so we'll be looking to put them for nomination to the next council meeting, with nominations due to LGA in early September. There was a meeting of the Murraylands and Riverland LGA where there was expression of interest from 2 mayors from SAROC. So currently sitting on SAROC. One is. And so LG president is currently SAROC's turn for the nominations, which I believe there's going to be further discussion about at the LGA AGM about that. Did you want to speak to that at all?
Yeah, look, basically nobody wanted to go on SAROC. I let the team know if nobody goes on SAROC, that means we don't get votes for the board, and I think it's really important. The board, I think you said expression of interest. I'm not sure I expressed interest, but the board, basically one person said they'd put up their hand if I at least went on, so that we've got a little bit of history there to help them through. So, yeah, the board made a motion that Trevor Norton and I will put our name up, but obviously that's got to go through council, so that will be through council. They're very aware that I'm leaving in April and not applying again. But like I said, we need some people to vote some people onto the board so that we get good regional representation. The president role we actually didn't discuss. It'll be very interesting because at the moment the president has to come from somebody who's served SAROC for more than a year. So literally it's a handful of people. It's really unfair. It means that we're not necessarily getting the best president. So the MRLGA board actually moved a motion, and Coorong are going to do a motion at their meeting this month to put a motion to the LGA board for the AGM. To get that looked into, because it's not really fair. It means, you know, like people like me, I couldn't have gone my first term because I hadn't been on SAROC for 2 years, or there might have been people like, well, we didn't go on SAROC because of the flood. So, yeah, it really doesn't give everyone an opportunity, and we believe that the board and the president should be the best people for the role, so we shouldn't be stopping people from applying just because they haven't been on SAROC. So that's the deal.
Thank you, Simone.
So we'll be putting up the report to council for nomination for SAROC, also LGA president, to which there are a limited number to choose from, as the mayor said. So if there's more than 2 nominations for the SAROC, then it will go to vote. But currently, Mayor Simone and then Mayor Trevor Norton as well from Loxton Waikerie.
Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Simone. I'm going to move now into the final item, which is my confidential interim CEO update. So Darren's given me the thumb up, which means that we're no longer online.